A few days ago, the President of the United States wrote just 3 words on Truth Social, in all capital letters, by the way. 3 words addressed to his own party in the Senate. Don't be fools. And he put an exclamation mark. With these 3 words, he demanded that the Republican senators destroy one of the last structural safeguards of American freedom, the 60-vote rule. We call it the filibuster. Today, we will break down what kind of law Trump is demanding to tear down the safeguards for, and what is the only path that is compatible with freedom and common sense. I believe that serious political decisions require a serious conversation. No slogans, no shouting. Analysis. There will be another topic that is both extremely simple and extremely complicated at the same time. What will you do if a neighbor you've greeted for many years crosses the street and stops? In a calm voice, he tells you that he is going to kill your children, and the police respond that they can't arrest him because you can't imprison someone for words. But let's start with the fundamental question. Should the filibuster be abolished or not? To be or not to be? Should the filibuster exist or not? Trump's position is completely clear. He wants to pass a law called the SAVE Act. This is a law about confirming American citizenship of American voters. The law is stuck in the Senate because of this very filibuster. In order to pass it, the Democrats, so to speak, need to deliver at least 7 votes for it. Otherwise, they won't reach 60. This is not happening. That's why Trump is demanding to get rid of the filibuster altogether. But here's a question for a moment. What will actually happen if Trump gets his way? This isn't about a single law, it's about what we will achieve if we decide to eliminate the filibuster. The filibuster is there to win and pass this law, and now I'll make you a promise. In a few minutes in this video, I'll tell you about an experiment that the state of Utah conducted quite recently. An experiment in which the state authorities checked more than 2 million registered voters for citizenship. I'll tell you what they found. It's very interesting. And when you hear the number, you'll understand why the whole debate about this SAVE Act looks completely different than I thought before I learned about this experiment. Completely different from how this whole story is presented to us, but we'll come back to that later. In the meantime, my friends, if you care about hearing serious, unbiased analysis of American politics in Russian, please subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the bell and basically react to what's happening here. Because we're interested, and we're kind of changing direction, adding something, removing something, depending on what you gentlemen write to us. Every subscription, every time you click the bell, it's a signal to YouTube that these kinds of conversations are needed. It's the only way we can keep making these programs. If, for example, 10 to 15% of people hit like, then YouTube knows, well, that's fine, that's good, that's okay. But if it's 30%, that means there are people who don't hit like, but they still enjoy it. Well, I hit like I do it on principle, so 30% means, wow, people really liked it, and it starts showing it to more people. So you can actually influence how things spread by hitting the bell, liking, and leaving a comment, right? When there's activity, YouTube thinks to itself, this is interesting. People are interested, they're having conversations, they're staying longer on YouTube, which is exactly what YouTube wants, right? All right, let's start with the law. SAVE Act. Or exactly SAVE. Great name. The full one. Safeguard. American Water Eligibility Act requires every American who registers to vote in federal elections to provide documentary proof of their citizenship. Which is what? Such proof includes a U.S. passport, a birth certificate, a certificate of naturalization, or what we call a real ID, in which citizenship is explicitly stated. In addition, the law requires photo ID when voting, both in person and by mail. The House of Representatives passed this law on February 12, 2026. It's a good law, 13 days after it was introduced. The speed is remarkable. This is a law that the right and I, including myself, would like to pass as quickly as possible. Sounds simple, right? Sounds reasonable. Only citizens should vote. Only citizens, huh? You have to prove you're a citizen. Who opposes that? This is where reality starts. The reality of America. According to estimates by the Brennan Center for Justice, and note, this is not a partisan organization, it's a legal center at New York University, About 21,300,000 U.S. citizens don't have the required documents on hand. 21 million. That's Florida's population. Let's continue. According to the Center for American Progress, nearly 69 million married women have a birth certificate that lists their maiden name, a last name that no longer matches their legal name. That means to register, they need to bring not just one document, but a whole folder. A birth certificate, plus a marriage certificate, plus sometimes divorce papers or documents related to a remarriage. You could say that it's for a good cause and they have at least 2 years to do it, so they should do it, right? Why not? Rural Americans, those same rural Americans who mostly vote for Republicans, often live far from the counties that are supposed to certify the document. Only 48% of Americans actually have a passport. That was the case. Elderly African Americans who were born in the segregated South often never received a birth certificate at all. They were just born, that's it. And this is especially true for all of us who come from the former Soviet Union. Naturalized citizens often have documents where their name is transliterated in 3 different ways. I have a doctor with a last name. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't want to say his name right now, but when he showed me how his last name was written, I was completely stunned. There were 3 different versions within a single last name. Not even mistakes, but some kind of fantastic inventions, probably made by some officials or maybe some Africans. Or maybe someone was sitting at the reception trying to copy down his last name, sticking out their tongue, of course, and trying to write his last name in English the way they imagined English, half French, half English. Who knows, but every such discrepancy becomes grounds for review, grounds for denying registration, and now the most important thing, this isn't just theory, this has already happened. In 2013, the state of Kansas tried to introduce exactly the same system, documentary proof of citizenship. By the time the federal court overturned this law in 2018, that is 5 years later, 31,000 real U.S. citizens had been blocked when trying to register. You might say, idiots, they deserved it. Okay, actually, I agree with you, yeah. But I just want to point out that 31,000 is just in Kansas alone. Real people, 1 state, 5 years. Remember this number, we'll come back to it. Now about the filibuster. The modern filibuster requires 60 votes in the Senate to end debate and move to a vote on the bill. Without 60 senators, the bill won't pass. Many say it's absurd. It blocks democracy. It paralyzes the Senate. That's what the Democrats say when they have the majority and can't pass what they want. That's what the Republicans say now when they have the majority and can't push through what they want. And that, my friends, is the main sign that the filibuster is working well. Because if everyone is equally dissatisfied with it, it means it's protecting the balance. It means no one gets absolute power. You don't just get what you want. The modern filibuster is not an anomaly, not an accident, not an oversight. It's the last serious structural break in the American political machine, and it was made intentionally. A bicameral Congress, a 6-year term for senators, the Electoral College, different terms of office for different branches of government. The entire architecture of the American Republic is built on a single principle: to make it difficult for a simple majority, to make it impossible for an instant dictatorship of 51%. And here, my friends, I want to recall a Russian thinker who spoke about this more precisely than anyone else, Nikolai Alexandrovich Berdyaev. The Philosophy of Inequality. Philosophy, I think it was 1923, at least the book I had was from that year. Berdyaev writes, and I quote, "Equality is the negation of freedom." Listen, this is brilliant. At first you don't get it, right? Equality is the negation of freedom. Democrats are always calling for equality. Socialists are always calling for equality. The man says equality is the negation of freedom. Think about this phrase. Berdyaev writes that envy too lies at the foundation of equality, the pathos of equality. Envy lies at the foundation of the pathos of equality. That's what he wrote, right? And most importantly, this is what I've been quoting for many, many, many years. Freedom is the right to inequality, my, second channel, so to speak, which I call educational, more or less, right? It's not really educational, but it is, right? It's written up there at the top. Freedom is the right to inequality. Now you might ask, what did Berdyaev mean by that, or what do you or he mean by it? Here's what he and I mean. The desire to subject the minority to the simple numerical dominance of the majority is a spiritual capitulation to leveling. 10 people have gathered. 3 of them work hard, studied, and earn well, and 7 just goof off. They're just goofing off or acting foolish, right? So they all got together and voted to take away half the money that the hardworking 3 earn and split it among themselves so they can keep goofing off. Since it's a democracy, they're perfectly fine with 6 against 4. A simple majority. It doesn't matter if it's equalizing like under Lenin or procedural like it is today in Washington. The principle is the same.
Должна торжествовать.
Immediately, without resistance, without breaks, without protection for those who think differently. So they just gathered, made a decision, a 51% majority immediately started carrying it out. The filibuster is the institutional embodiment of Berdyaev's intuition. It's the protection of the individual. It's the protection of the minority of states. The protection of the minority of opinions from the fact that 51% could immediately impose their will across the whole country. That's called dictatorship. That's called tyranny. The same principle in ethical terms was expressed 2,000 years ago by the great sage Hillel Agadov, Talmud Tractate. I think it's the Tractate Shabbat, page 31. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. We often say what you don't want done to you, don't do to others. Don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. From Hebrew, you can translate it a little this way or a little that way. But most likely it's what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. Apply it to the filibuster. Would you want your opponent to use the same procedure on you that you now want to use on him? And now we come to the main point. I am now addressing each Republican senator of the United States of America directly. Those who can read Russian or know how to use Google Translate, especially to those who are hesitating. To those who are thinking maybe it really is worth voting with Trump, passing this very SAVE Act. We do have 51 votes and we could put an end to this. Dear Senator, I will ask you 5 questions. Think about each of them honestly. First question, are you ready for the Democrats when they might get a majority in the Senate in 2027 to pass a statehood law for Colombia and Puerto Rico with a simple majority of 51 votes? This will add 4 senators who are almost guaranteed to be Democrats for a very long time. Your majority will become mathematically almost impossible for a decade. Second question. Are you ready for the Democrats to expand the Supreme Court from 9 to 13 justices with a simple majority of 51 votes, for example? Yes, a Democrat is president, so that means 4. The ratio will become 7 to 6 in favor of the liberals. One day, all the conservative decisions of the last 20 years, Dobbs, Bruen, Heller, West Virginia versus EPA, will be reviewed and overturned. Third question. Are you ready for 51 Democratic votes to bring back the Fairness Doctrine? It's called the Fairness Doctrine, and thereby killed conservative radio. Every show, Rush Limbaugh in the archives, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and yes, on my humble show, The Voice of Common Sense, I would be required to give equal time to liberal opponents. That is, I talk for half an hour, and then I'm required to give equal time to my opponent. Half the listeners will tune out after the first change in tone. The end of conservative broadcasting in 2 years, tops. Fourth question. Are you ready for the Democrats to pass amnesty with 51 votes and a path to citizenship for 11, 18, 20 million illegal residents? But that will give 10 million new votes. New voters within a decade. For whom? The Democrats. America's electoral map will change forever. Texas will become a Democratic state in just 1 cycle. Honorable Senator, if your honest answer to even one of these questions is no, then according to Hillel's principle, you are obligated to vote against the abolition of the filibuster today. Otherwise, you are handing your opponent the knife that will be used to stab you tomorrow. And when they tell you that as soon as the Democrats come to power, they will do it anyway, just look back. For some reason, they didn't do it over the past 8, 10, 15, or even 20 years. Under Obama, under Biden. This is not a poetic metaphor. This is arithmetic. These are consequences. This is the reality that your voters, your real voters, will live in. They will be facing it in 2, 4, 6 years. And let's take a look, friends. Let's expand this list. What else can the Democrats do if they have the opportunity? That means a decision with 51 votes if the filibuster goes. Let me quickly list them by category. In the area of elections, lowering the voting age to 16, boom. All the idiots who have no experience yet rush to vote. For what? For freedom. Federal automatic registration. Same day, on the spot. Complete ban on voter ID requirements. Restoring voting rights to criminals, including those who are serving their sentence right now. Abolishing the Electoral College. Abolishing the Electoral College, by the way. In the area of courts, not just expanding the Supreme Court. Packing appellate courts at all levels. Urgent term limits for judges applied retroactively, stripping federal courts of jurisdiction over specific issues, which is allowed under Article 3 of the Constitution. In the area of firearms, a federal ban on assault weapons, national with no right for states to overturn it, federal registration of all firearms, federal registration, repeal of protection for gun manufacturers from lawsuits. So if someone kills someone with their gun, they will be sued for it, right? Bankruptcy happens immediately. Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Glock, all of them. Universal background checks. A father can no longer pass a gun to his son without federal permission. If the son is caught hunting with a gun that isn't registered to him, both he and his father will be prosecuted. Federal license required to own any firearm. The New York model, which is spreading across the whole country. I'm not making this up. It really exists. Now for the most joyful part. In the area of freedom of speech, the Fairness Doctrine, I already mentioned it, right? But besides that, federal regulation of content moderation on social media, the requirement for platforms to remove disinformation according to government criteria, we already know how this works. Federal Disinformation Agency, which will have very real powers. Hate speech law based on the European model. Speech crimes with criminal liability. Try to repost what I write that the Democratic president is an idiot, right? Oh, you wrote it. 2 years. Here, 5. With confiscation, and they'll come down on you. These are already all the existing bills. I mean, the Democratic ones. They didn't pass, but they're in Congress. They exist. They're waiting. What are they waiting for? Oh, they're waiting for a majority. Maybe there will be 60 someday. And if the Republicans change it to 51, then the Democrats will have a real celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be a direct attack on federalism, a federal attack on right-to-work laws. So in 27 states, whether you're a union member or not, you can go to work and they'll hire you. And there are 23 states where the Democrats are in charge, where if you're not a union member, you won't be hired. Federal repeal of RFRA in every state. Federal repeal of state gun rights packages. Federal standardization of the school curriculum. No one will have the right to teach a child anything except what they've decided in Washington should be taught. Do you want that? In other words, the whole agenda of states as laboratories, which conservatives have fought for over 70 years, would be eliminated by a simple majority vote. And this isn't a horror scenario. These are, once again, existing bills that are in Congress. They are written, they are formalized, and they are waiting for their time. What is holding them back? One thing. Just one thing. It's called the filibuster, that very 60-vote rule that Donald Trump is now demanding to abolish. Well, think about that. Can he bring it back? You're wrong. There are ways to pass the SAVE Act without abolishing the filibuster. Well, okay, that's already good. Without abolishing the filibuster. All right, let's try to look at the ways. There are 4 of them. Well, that's what the press writes about. That's what's being discussed. That's what's happening on TV. The senators are talking about it there. The first is called reconciliation in English, or soglasovanie in Russian. It's a budget mechanism that requires 51 votes, but the Byrd Rule cuts out everything that is not predominantly budget-related. That is, the SAVE Act is a procedural regulatory law, not a financial one. The Senate parliamentarian, which is an actual position, will almost certainly cut it out. It's an oversight position in the Senate, and to get around the parliamentarian, you would have to fire them. This is essentially the nuclear option, just more covert. Then the Democrats will also start firing people. Those who are appointed to fire people. Basically, it's the same damage to the structure, the same precedent for the Democrats when they get the majority next year. The second option is to attach it to a must-pass bill. To include this SAVE Act in the defense budget law or in the signals law, it's standard practice but risky. The conference committee will most likely remove the amendment to avoid a shutdown. And again, if the same Democrats do this, they might attach an abortion rights expansion or gun control to the Pentagon funding bill. Anything, really. Yes, the precedent works both ways. So, again, it's not very good. The third option is reinstatement. Well, the talking filibuster. Remember, there was a movie about it, right? Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and so on. That is, to force a Democrat to physically stand and speak at the podium without a break. Less radical than a complete repeal, but still requires 51 votes to change the rules. And the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, has already said publicly, well, we don't have those votes. The fourth option is a presidential executive order. Well, he already signed an executive order in March 2025 that requires documentary proof. But in the end, it's Congress that makes the decision. So all of this will come back again, so to speak. Courts, and it will come back again. All four workarounds have a common feature. They either destroy the same structural break as a direct repeal, or they are doomed to lose in court, or both at the same time. But there is a fifth way, a fifth point. The fifth is always good, right? It's probably the only way compatible with freedom. The fifth one is that very, NATO Article 5, right? The only one that's really serious there. And now, as I promised at the beginning of the video, I'll tell you about the experiment in Utah. That's why, as I already said, it changed something in my head, in my mind, in my brain, in the gray matter or in the very gray cells of my brain. It changed something. The U.S. Constitution, in Article 1, Section 4, clearly gives the states primary authority over the time, place, and manner of conducting federal elections. Each state decides how it sends its votes, how it processes and sends them. The state is given a certain number of votes, and it decides how to send those votes, right? This is not a coincidence. This is a deliberate distribution of power, reflecting exactly that federalist principle, not the kind where everything comes from the center, right? Which today's conservatives proclaim, but they regularly violate it when it's convenient for them, gentlemen. By the beginning of 2026, 12 states already had some form of citizenship verification requirements, and only this year, 4 more joined them. In 24 states this year, 41 bills on the same topic have been introduced or are moving forward. In Iowa, for example, the bill has already passed one chamber, right? A realistic forecast. By the end of 2027, about, 20 to 22 states will have some kind of documentary citizenship verification system. And that, my friends, is normal. This is federalism in action. Now here's the main thing I promised. Now Utah. Utah is a state that just passed its own law and recently completed one of the most thorough voter roll audits in American history. State authorities checked more than 2 million registered voters. That's 2 million. 1 case of a non-citizen registration, and 0 cases of voting because the one who registered didn't go to vote. 1 and 0. Out of more than 2 million, by the way, right? Federal data from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service shows the same thing. 0.04% of voter verification cases flag a possible non-citizen. And a flag, I repeat, does not mean confirmation. Audits in North Carolina, Georgia, and Ohio over the past decades have found dozens of cases of improper registration, not even voting, registration, not thousands, not millions. dozens. Again, I want to say once more that it's better to do things in a way that prevents any possibility of this happening. Right? But let's just remember Kansas. Remember, I asked you to remember 31,000 real citizens. It turned out they were blocked. They're jerks themselves, they didn't go themselves. Guilty, guilty, guilty. We really don't want people like that voting. It's all clear, right? But the fact is that 31,000 real citizens are blocked just to protect against a problem that's statistically close to zero. Again, once more. It's better to do it, but at what cost? That's the answer. That's what federalism shows when it's allowed to work. Utah ran an experiment. The experiment produced data. The data says the problem is very small. And we're told, in order to solve this very small problem, we need to end the filibuster, which will lead to a huge number of problems. It's not just a matter of should we or shouldn't we. Well, of course, that's what they're saying. After all, let's fix it just in case because it might happen in the future, right? But if this fix leads to that, it's unfair, it's wrong, it's not good. But that's life. And there's nothing we can do about it because we have half the country that wants something else, right? This is exactly the laboratory function of the states that Andrew Galambos, an astrophysicist and founder of the Free Enterprise Institute in Los Angeles, who developed volitional science, talked about. This is what I'm trying to talk about in the roadmap to freedom, taking it as one of the main guarantees of freedom. Limited blast radius, reversible decisions, local information for national discussion. But if we take science, social sciences, seriously as sciences, we must be ready to update our beliefs based on the results of experience. This is intellectual honesty. The experience of Utah undermines the justification for the federal act rather than confirming it. Trump supporters today are demanding to end the filibuster to pass a law that addresses an almost non-existent problem at the cost of thousands of real citizens being blocked. It destroys one of the last structural breaks against the fleeting majority, and which in any case will not achieve its political goal because it won't reach the key swing states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. Why? Because there, the Democrats have governors, there are divided registries, there are legal precedents that block such measures, and this won't change the presidential electoral math. So I fully support the fight, but the whole thing is pointless. A bad deal by any measure. By any measure. But I still want to end on an optimistic note, and here's why. Several Republican senators said no to this pressure. John Thune, Markwayne Mullin, John Curtis. They did it publicly. They did it knowing the political cost, and they are right. Senator Curtis put it best. The filibuster, the existence of the filibuster, forces us to look for common ground. You can't just come in and hit someone over the head with a sledgehammer, right? We have to look for common ground. It's a simple phrase, and that's Hillel, translated into the language of an American senator. Do not do to your opponent what you would not want done to yourself. Compel a search for agreement. Keep the brakes on. No matter how much you want to speed up now, later when power changes hands, things will speed up in ways you really won't like. Berdyaev, in The Philosophy of Inequality, warned, "Freedom is the right to inequality." Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Freedom is the right to inequality. In political architecture, this means the right of states to be different, the right of minorities to be heard, the right of institutions to keep their checks in place, even when the majority really wants to go without brakes. Today, the American right faces a choice: to use federal power the way the left has used it for the past 70 years, or to remember that federalism conservatives have always claimed as their principle. And you know what? I have reasons to be optimistic. And so do you. The states of Florida, Utah, Mississippi, and South Dakota are going their own way, the way of the Constitution. Utah's experience has given us data that makes an honest conversation possible. Now we can talk with these numbers and conclusions in front of us. We have 2,000 years of accumulated wisdom on how to preserve freedom. Freedom is protected not by shouting, not by nuclear options, not by destroying institutions for the sake of a momentary victory. Freedom is protected by patience, principles, and trust in the structure that the Founding Fathers passed down to us. This is the golden rule in political architecture. This is the kind of society we should strive for, a society of the golden rule. And once again, I talk about this on our other channel, which is called Roadmap to Freedom. And as long as there are senators willing to say no to pressure for the sake of principles, as long as there are states ready to do their job according to the Constitution, as long as there are listeners, you, my dear friends, who are ready to think independently, they will not bow to slogans. This republic is alive. I believe in it. I'm sure of it. Thank you for watching until the end. If you find this program useful, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you don't miss new programs. Share the video with those who you think will find it important to hear. And every click is a vote for a serious conversation in Russian. Every comment is a signal that such conversations are needed. This has been Leon Vainstein. See you next time. Protect your freedom. It is more fragile than it seems to you.
Кажется.